let's start. Alright. I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then I eventually fell asleep at some point, not realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. It was then I noticed that the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call. Akasaka, good morning. Oops. Akasaka, good morning. It's Oishi. Waking up to the sound of Oishi's voice was a little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing, but thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake. Hello. Good morning. Huh? Gonna be you just woke up? Even though you're on assignment, it's still not good to be asleep during regular business hours. You're absolutely right. I'll be more careful in the future. I have another tidbit that might wake you up even more. There was something interesting mixed in the lost and found at the Hinamizawa police box. Lost and found? Let's leave the details for when you get here. You think you'll be able to make it before noon? No, I'll be right there. Oishi already knew what my mission was. Since Oishi said it was something that would wake me up, it was hard to believe that would be irrelevant to me. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Hinamizawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. If there was some information there that could put me back on the trail, that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. After vigorously washing my face, I put on my jacket and hailed a taxi heading toward the Okinomiya police station. Oh, you're here. The genius mahjong player has arrived. My apologies for being late. So exactly what popped up? With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's mahjong game, I pressed him to get to the point. Oishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance. Like I said earlier, something arrived from the Hinamizawa police box was lost and found this morning. Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to Okinomiya Station after the paperwork was filled out. Oishi pulled out the plastic bag from a drawer and laid out its labeled contents on the desk. Is that a wallet? Indeed. There was a small change inside, but no bills. We thought that a pickpocket threw it away after pulling out the contents at first. I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could be possibly related to the kidnapping. If it had drawn Oishi's attention, it would have to be something dramatic like the wallet that belonged to the missing grandchild. That would be absurd, like something that convenient could happen. If that was it, then there was probably some initials written on the wallet, like the initials of Toshiki Inugai, the minister's grandson, T.I. Thinking like that at this point, I didn't suppose that wallet was something that Oishi could guess so excited. Oishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel like this wallet was that much of an important thing, so I had my doubts whether there was any point in putting on gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Oishi opened the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the bag. As I imagined, there were initials engraved there, but it was slightly more detailed than I thought, with Toshiki I marked on it. Oishi grinned at me with a look on his face and said, "See? We can't confirm that from his belongings to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. This wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's over-eagerness. First of all, there was absolutely no way in this distant locale that a missing grandson's wallet would be found at such a convenient timing. After all, the Onigafuji Defense Alliance wasn't related to the case in the first place, so there was no way this wallet belonged to the grandson. Why I wanted to decide that was the case, even I didn't really know, even though what should have been top secret case was leaked before I even had been dispatched. In this situation, how could I say this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay attention to this wallet? It had only been a couple of days since I had arrived in Hinamizawa, but in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have become just a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. By the way, the thing I wanted to say, I just remembered last night. So the thing that I forgot to say last night was I messed up with saying Orio's name because it kind of, to me, I feel like I'm saying Oreo instead of Rio. Okay? It's kind of, I have to be careful that I don't say Oreo instead of Rio, like Oreo. Okay? I have to be careful. And it's really hard, and that's why I was laughing at one of the points. And I felt really bad and embarrassed. I'm just saying. Okay? So, yeah. That's what I wanted to say. Oishi opened the wallet's zipper, revealing the contents. Inside was a small change and a number of crumpled receipts. Oishi from that jumble pulled out a folded card. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name Toshiki Inugai and the age, a perfect match. The dentist's location was in Tokyo. There was no need to explain any further how far it was from Tokyo to Hinamizawa. It was far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still take several hours. Why would a wallet with a dental examination card from Tokyo show up inside of Hinamizawa? Could it belong to a tourist who came from Tokyo? Or maybe a villager on vacation to Tokyo just happened to pay a visit to the dentist? No, it had to have fallen into somebody's bag by accident. In my mind, I desperately struggled to find a possible excuse as to why this wallet didn't belong to Toshiki Inugai. It was as if it just wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one. Their haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come into clear focus. See? I felt a shiver, electricity run up my spine. My pulse quickened and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Oishi's point of view, I was properly slack-jawed and spaced out with a slovenly look on my face. Did you get any information from the dental office? That's your job, Akasaka. I didn't go that far. Then when did this wallet show up? The person who picked it up was a villager. They did so yesterday, it seems. Not that I mean, when was this wallet dropped? It rained here last week, exactly 7 days ago. It doesn't look like the contents are water damage, so the longest it could probably be was 6 days. Does anybody else at this station have knowledge of the existence of this wallet? The officer who first encountered it at the Hinamizawa police box, also 2 or 3 people in charge of the lost and found. Other than that, it's just me and you. If it's involved in a classified case, it'd be bad to talk about, wouldn't it? I don't intend to wag my tongue. May I borrow a phone? Go ahead, dial 0 to get an outside line. I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Could there possibly be something so absurd? The addresses on the receipts and cards inside the wall were all from around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced that the wallet had been left behind also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it's possible that I could laugh it off as all a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence. Rather, all this evidence proof the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have a much greater meaning. Hello, sorry to keep you waiting. This is XX Dental Office. Hello, this is XX Police. I have a misplaced wallet here. I'm trying to get in contact with the owner. Would you be able to help me? Inside the wallet, there's an examination card from your office. Yes, the name is Toshiki Inugai. If I give you the number on the card, would you be able to look up the phone number? Yes, thank you. If you could. Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it. Yes, hello. Yes, go ahead. I compared the phone number written in my notebook to the one that was being read out on the other end of the line. During the process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes with Oishi. Oishi looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind me? That was because the person on the end of the line was reading out the numbers as though doing it straight from my notebook. And not footsteps. It seems that HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. When the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I found to be almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally handed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thrum on the other end on the other line disappeared, and I knew it had gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words. Got it. We'll dispatch several people as reinforcements. They should be able to make it there by evening. Akasaka, please continue with your investigation of the area. Get some information on the spot where the wallet was found. Kano will select some people and head directly there. The fact that he was sending Kano, the lead investigator here, meant the chief had decided there was a possibility the Onigafushi Defense Alliance were somehow implicit in the kidnapping. However, it felt as though until the lead investigator, whom he trusted, had verified the evidence with his own lines, he was still going to be skeptical about it. How'd it go? It seems that HQ is sending reinforcements. I was ordered to investigate the area. Where was the wallet dropped? Around Takasudo, apparently. This is in Okinomiya. All the way over here, this is Hinamizawa. And even further up the stream, way up there is Takasudo. Oishi explained the wallet was found by pointing to locations on the map on the wall. This place called Takasudo was even more remote than Hinamizawa was. There's hardly anybody living in the area around Takasudo. It's deserted a long time ago. It's littered with abandoned houses. It's really quite desolate around there. Oishi, could I ask you to guide me to Takasudo? Yeah, I don't mind. You can't really get into Hinamizawa as you please by yourself, after all. Of course, I'll have to make you wear a cap and mask again. That Oishi had agreed to accompany was very assuring. If Sato's info was to be believed, my cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized the fresh meat dispatched from the public safety and the tourists had visited the village yesterday, in other words, me. But decided they hadn't noticed would have been overly optimistic. Given a cursory thought, Takasudo, where the wallet was found, couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. The Takasudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it alongside a highway. There wasn't a reason for even the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It's exactly why you'd call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the road. You couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takasudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. Those several conditions made the area all more important. I couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that the Onigafuchi Defense Alliance or somebody hired by them were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, the fact that this wallet found right here might have already been leaked to them. They even knew so much as how the public safety division was operating. The case of the wallet couldn't be something they didn't know. In that case, there's a possibility the enemy was lying in wait. To dive alone to enemy territory surrounded by enemy territory, to say it at least, required an amount of courage, nay, recklessness, that I just did not have. Without your company, Oishi, I wouldn't be able to step into the village so easily. Thank you so very much for your cooperation. Honestly, I thought you would ask for more money. Well, we're being honest, Hinamizawa isn't exactly a place I like to go to. I'd at least appreciate if you paid for a cab fare. Still, it's not a request I can refuse from a friend that's played at the same table as me. Oishi grinned as he pounded me on the back. It struck me that he didn't just want to jump ship rather than have this sort of sense of duty towards his job. Even so, that didn't really matter. Right now, I really appreciate the gesture. Well then, shall we hurry up and get going? If the enemy knew the police had obtained the wallet, they'd probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't any moment to lose, but Oishi, without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket. What are you doing? Well, just a precaution. If you want me to poke a beehive to get your honey, I have to be, rather prepared, you see. You want to put one on too? What Oishi pulled from the drawer below the desk was a stab-proof vest. His name was Toshiki Inugai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction Inugai. There was only one reason for him being here. If you didn't include gym or art class, his grades were above average. That was a result of having private tutoring lessons twice a week. If you omitted the fact he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that could make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister, but he also knew not too many people were interested in their relationship. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather or call him the Minister of Construction. And finally, he at least tried to know a little more about what kind of work the Minister of Construction than your average Joe. What entailed was that when you tried your best to make life better for the masses, sometimes you made a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he'd spent as a class representative. His grandfather had made many enemies. He knew he might personally catch some of that fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew this was one of those occasions. He understood he wasn't being treated as Toshiki Inugai, the person, but rather Toshiki Inugai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but this was the result of some unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax if only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But after a while of being tied up and only being able to stay lying down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the reason to that answer easily. He was taken hostage to coerce his grandfather, the minister. There is no doubt about that. He didn't know exactly what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed his own grandfather was within the top 20 of the most important people in Japan. That is exactly why he couldn't forgive anybody who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anybody who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy and rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why with the little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced, and as an apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson very, very much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked down upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought even once that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician, because it was his beloved grandfather. He wanted him to continue his career as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson, maybe even putting aside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave in to the culprit's demand if it meant saving his grandson. When Toshiki thought about that, an inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly means. That feeling swelled up inside of him, displacing the fear. What he thought of as first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of those bonds, beat up the bad guys, and hand them over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from the manga he had read passed through the back of his mind. In this imaginary scenario, he slipped his bonds easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, and stinging like a debris to bring them all down. In the end, it was nothing more than his silly little fantasy, but with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something that he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for a long period of time he was tied up. His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to run through his head. It was then he realized none of them were a solution. Yes, he wanted to do something for his grandfather who was being threatened. That he was being held here to inflict pain on his grandfather was the most thing that he could at least forgive, and also the most vexing. And then he noticed there was a much more simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captors. That was to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. The captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly. They made sure he was fed well enough, meaning at most he was nothing more than the means for their threat. They weren't looking to bully him and killing him out of spite. If he behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage. Carrying his train of thought this far, he let it run its course to its natural conclusion. Right now, at this moment, Toshiki Inugai had decided to escape. His ears had been stuffed with a sponge-like material, acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't actually do much to block out any sound. He could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing this was to his advantage, even when his captors spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking he couldn't hear their conversations, talked about all sorts of things without any reservations. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this wasn't Tokyo. It seemed this was quite a distance away, and on top of that, in the countryside nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed like his captors were inconvenienced living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That fact caused him some dismay because he knew the method he learned at school of running around blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused his little mental escape scenario here. His ultimate goal was to find somebody who would help him. If somebody who fit that description wasn't close by, his chances of escaping successfully grew slim. A desolate, far-off land deep in the mountains. A place where you couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be very difficult. He grew depressed, and after a little while, he returned to his original scenario, imagining becoming a hero like in the manga he read, and beating down his captors became his respite. However, as he played those delusions out in his head, his heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. And then, he thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal, in a nutshell, was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, then his captors would have to take him to the hospital or bring a doctor to him. They'd probably be reluctant to do that, but he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. In the off chance that something happened, like him dying, occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. Luckily, he had an experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was still clearly visible on his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of the experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. His captors at first took that as a sign he needed to use the washroom. Untying only his arms, they tried to bring him there while he was still blindfolded, but he didn't try to get up. His hands, now free, only clutched at his abdomen as he writhed in agony. "Hey, what's wrong? Does your stomach hurt?" He still had his earplugs in, so he had to pretend he didn't hear his captors asking the question. He was about to nod, so he hurriedly had to stop himself. "What's the matter?" Yeah, the kid's clutching at his stomach. Must be a stomachache or something. His captors looked down on his suffering for him for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while the other laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking it. "What's wrong, boy? Your tummy hurt?" "His ears are plugged so he can't hear you." "Well, that's a problem. Do we have any medicine that works on stomach pain?" "Might want to go to the pharmacy and buy some." When it comes to stomach pain, there's a bunch of different meds, isn't there? As long as we don't know the cause, we shouldn't just buy him any old medicine. He's holding his stomach. Maybe he's just constipated. You buy him some medicine for that. Maybe that'll calm him down. It won't kill him if we're wrong neither. Don't decide something like that on your own. It might be appendicitis or something. My uncle suddenly got it a while ago. That was pretty scary. One of the captors leaned over beside the boy, who was bent over in agony. "I feel sorry for the kid. Oh, his whole body's covered in sweat. Isn't it your stomach? Does it hurt? Hey, if it hurts, you shouldn't clutch at it so tightly. I'll only make it worse." Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently let his shirt right up, letting the scar from his surgery come into plain view. His vision was still obscured with packing tape, so he couldn't see their reaction to his scar. His captors were taken aback. Judging from their momentary silence, he obtained the reaction he was looking for. "Hey, this is bad. This scar, it's not that old. Does that boy have a fever? Is there a thermometer around?" "No way, we have one, but that's a lot of sweat." "Yeah, his forehead feels pretty high, I think." "I've heard that under prolonged stress, old wounds can be aggravated." "Then what do we do? Are you saying the medicine won't work?" "We don't know what that surgery the scar was from, but in any case, this is bad. In the worst case, it could be fatal." "This is bad. This is really bad, really bad. Maybe we should have a doctor look at it. At any rate, there's a chance that he might suddenly die on us." Toshiki Inigai, with those few words, knew the situation was progressing exactly as he had envisioned it. Snickering to himself on the inside, pressed his act even further. He didn't even need to see to know that his captors were panicked and were running around like chickens with their heads cut off at troublesome term events. "Should we take him to the clinic?" "No, that's no good. Probably better if the doctor came here." "Dr. Irie, you mean? Is it okay? Will that be all right? It'd be worse if anything happened to the hostage. Nothing we can do. It's an emergency." While the captors hurriedly left in the car, another of the men, completely shaken at this point, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing a doctor. As long as the doctor wasn't an accomplice, the doctor was his goal. He was someone he could seek help from. His captors were probably aware of what was happening. They should be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was from nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape was covering his eyes and ears were just torn off. The burning light that he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag made it hard for him to breathe was also removed. "Are you alright, kid? We're bringing a doctor to you right now. Just hold on for a bit." The doctor was coming. The doctor was coming. Now, how he was going to ask for help and how was he going to get away from his captors? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his mind. "I think you know this already, but don't say anything unnecessary to the doctor. We don't want to hurt you or anything. You understand that, right?" Toshiki Inigai nodded while feigning pain and obedience. His expectations and the enemy expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was and would try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the strenuousness of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach really was starting to hurt. No, it really was. But there's no reason to panic. If he had failed with his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. If there was something to lose, it was this method of faking illness to get in touch with the doctor. If he could think of other methods from here on out, it wasn't much. But at the present, this was the easiest, most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more it looked like this was his first and last gambit. Eventually, he heard the sound of the car approaching once again. The sound of the car doors being hurriedly opened and shut. The sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on its face. Who's he? He's not one of the kids from the village, is he? The captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly. That's got nothing to do with you, Doc. For a while, the doctor and the captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continued to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further. I'm concerned about this old surgical scar. What kind of operation was it? We don't know. I should really bring him back to the clinic. Doc, we really can do that. The doctor said he wanted to bring the boy back to the clinic, but the captors simply silently shook their heads in the notion. It was a fleeting hope, but it was only natural the captors would refuse. At the moment his eyes met with the doctor's, seeing that the boy's painful state was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness. Are you all right? I'm a doctor. When was this surgical scar from? Last year, during the winter, from an accident. An accident, I see. This is a problem. He couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out a way to keep this going and tell the doctor he was being confined and needed help. I'm going to touch the affected area, okay? If it hurts, tell me where. Ah! Seeing it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Toshiki Inugai faking his illness was a performance of a lifetime. Good work, everyone. I know it's up, but please do your best. If you catch anybody illegally dubbing, please contact someone immediately. We'll act quickly. Thank you for your cooperation, Oishi. Please. A wide gap enough for a single car was opened up in the barricade. Oishi, showing his gratitude, or perhaps a threatening attitude, with a short beep on the horn, rolled the car through for the checkpoint. This time my appearance was the very embodiment of the word suspicious. A baseball cap, mask, and sunglasses. On top of that, even though it was sweltering, I was wearing a hoodie. Any respectable police officer would loathe to not stop me for questioning. I had to be overly cautious, knowing full well my face was known, but it might have already been too late for any of that to be of use. Using that as an excuse, I doffed the unbearably hot hoodie and windbreaker, ripped off the mask and hat, and threw them behind the seat. Oh my, is that okay? With a cheap little disguise like this, they probably figured it out anyways. That might just be the case. Oishi, probably thinking that my unexpected behavior was funny, continued to laugh. The beautiful and pristine scenery of Hinamizawa spread out before me. The village itself would have been quite beautiful if it weren't for the complicated circumstances surrounding it at the moment. I would absolutely love to take Yukie here for a drive one day. Come to think of it, I didn't get a chance to call her last night. I played around with the idea in my head, but in reality, this village wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had heard everything at the prefectural headquarters. At the heart of this village, the intelligence network of the three families wielded was, due to blood ties and regional relationships, unbelievably well organized. Their net spread not just around Hinamizawa itself, but encapsulated as the entirety of the city of Shishibone as well. When I first heard that somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I didn't take it completely seriously. How could a local organization out in the boonies here have something so grandiose? I couldn't deny that somewhere in the back of my mind I had ridiculed the thought. But not only were they really threatening the minister, they had demonstrated they had a complete grasp of our movements, which were supposed to be top secret. They were almost like the secret police that controlled a small Eastern European country, like some spy novel. The villagers here wouldn't bat an eye at getting their hands dirty if it meant funding the dam project. I also heard something like that at the prefectural headquarters. Now that you mention it, when I first arrived here, Oishi also said this place was a war zone, didn't he? The residents of this village were at the same time freedom fighters. Although, by definition, they were no different than guerrillas or a militia, they weren't protected by the Geneva Convention, but they also didn't have to adhere to those rules either. This place was more than a quagmire than any legitimate battlefield. A secret war was unfolding. I could drive along because Oishi was with me. But if I was to leave this car for even something as trivial as looking for a vending machine, there was a chance I wouldn't return. Even though a single shot hadn't been fired, this was a battlefield. No, the reasons why bullets weren't flying was simply because it was hard for a civilian to obtain a gun in Japan, so they were probably just equipped with weapons other than guns that were easier to obtain. That's why Oishi was wearing a stab-proof vest, wasn't it? Akasaka, you were nervous. The fact that I was apprehensive was of course picked up on by Oishi. If he had figured it out, there was no point trying to hide or deny it. Of course I am. We're headed into the heart of enemy territory alone, aren't we? I'm worried about if something unlikely happens with just the two of us. Something unlikely? It'll be alright. Is everybody in this village our enemy? If everybody gets this story straight, they could murder somebody in broad daylight and there wouldn't be a shred of evidence. I'm asking about something like that. This was what the ironclad rule of not barging into a Yakuza office alone was about. If there wasn't a neutral party involved, that area wasn't bound by the laws of common sense. If something happened, you wouldn't be able to prove it. There wasn't anybody who would take your side. It was pretty much the definition of poking a bear. I left the word that we're headed toward Inamizawa, and in the worst case, we've also got a radio. I know you're scared, Akasaka, but it's not that easy to pull off the perfect crime. Well, of course, that doesn't mean we can't let our guard down, either. Akasaka, you're too worked up over this. You were more relaxed the last time we came up here together, weren't you? Laughing it off, Oishi thumped his chest and grinned as if to say I could depend on him. Well, if it gets really iffy, this comes with having a badge. Oishi made the motion by sticking out his index finger. It was undoubtedly the image of a gun. Will it be of any use? You're not afraid of dealing with the aftermath after you shoot. It's actually very reassuring. An officer's gun was only for show. If you really wanted to fire it, there were quite a number of stipulations, and you had to be prepared for the long probationary period afterward. That definitely wasn't worth it, so even if an officer did unholster his gun, there wasn't one who would actually want to pull the trigger. Akasaka, are you carrying one? A piece. Well, yeah. You ever fired it? I have. For training, though. Well, I guess that'd be true. Well, then, have you, Oishi? Me? Nah, there's no way. What's this? I thought he was laughing at me because he had experience. The two of us laughed together. I also never pointed the barrel at anybody. I looked down the barrel of a gun a few times, though. Just being made to look down the barrel like that is enough to shorten your lifespan about 3 years. Even if you never fired a gun before, you couldn't even begin to compare the amount of experience Oishi had over me. At a time like this, I could only marvel again at how reliable Oishi seemed. Come to think of it, I didn't want to come this way in the middle of the day, but there's no way for a car to get through other than here. Akasaka, just in case, put on the mask and hide your face, please. What's the matter? Can you not hear it because the air conditioning's too loud? I'll turn it off. Try opening the window. When I opened the window, a blast of hot air blew inside, and then I could hear angry yelling coming from far away. At that moment, the force gave way on either of us. Our view expanded suddenly, and there could be seen the Hinamizawa Dam construction grounds, the very front line for Hinamizawa Village. We're absolutely opposed to the construction of the Hinamizawa Dam! The crackling blare of someone's voice sounded over an enormous loudspeaker. The roar of angry voices continued to rumble. The incredible volume had become a veritable sound cannon spewing out its ammunition. The prefabricated site office was surrounded by 2 sets of high fences laced with barbed wire. Lined up in the front, those fences were riot police and their vehicles. Surrounding it were all the villagers. They howled out their protests against the dam as a single entity. Oh, there's not too many of them today. We're in luck. That's not too many. Yeah, when there's a lot and the crowd reaches as far as the road, you wouldn't be able to inch forward in a car. At first, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me there were more people than there actually was. But upon a closer inspection, there are at most 50 to 70 of them. But 6 or 7 propaganda trucks lined up that looked like they belonged to a band of thugs that were straight enough sight. The villagers were also wearing helmets and bandanas, as well as covering their faces with masks. Adding to the oddity of it all, the propaganda trucks, after braying their chorus, had their volume turned up even higher and began to flood the area with sutras. To say the noise was downright violent would be an understatement. From this distance, it was still this loud. The glass in the office was probably rattling from the noise. They can't do anything there but take it. Those riot squad guys, every one of them is wearing earplugs, but they're still having their hearing damage. Or sobs. Can't you do something about it with this noise ordinance laws? Our professor doesn't have any laws regarding noise ordinance. Also, those are sutras, right? We can't regulate religious activities. Those guys are pretty smart. Is what I think Oishi said. Actually, no matter how tightly the window was shut, the booming sound of the sutras still filled the car. I couldn't even hear what Oishi, who was sitting right next to me, was saying. As the car approached the line of propaganda trucks, the blare had become difficult to bear. It wasn't enough to just plug my ears with my fingers. I had to hold my head to keep my skull from splitting apart. If I had seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood what Hinamizawa Village was much quicker. Now that I knew, they wouldn't blink an eye at sacrificing themselves in order to protect their hometown. So goddamn noisy. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up! My head throbbed like it was going to split apart. My eardrums crackled, and on top of that, I felt like I was going to throw up. With the road crowded with a throng of squatters, the propaganda trucks, and the riot police's vehicles, it was no easy way to get by. Even if you tried to shoot the squatters with the car horn, they were also wearing earplugs, oblivious to noises from the outside world, and wouldn't easily move. The car would only inch forward at a snail's pace. Even then, the car eventually got through, started to leave through the tumultuous noise behind. Hey, the bald guy that was playing mahjong with us last night, remember him? I remember there was an older person who didn't exactly mince words. The guy that Oishi called old man. Oops, that's... Okay, so Sato isn't the construction guy. That's the old man. Sorry, I kind of mix up those small details. There was someone like that. You see, he's the foreman of the main construction site. He's probably holed up in that prefab building trying to work while being irritated out of his mind. Poor fella. You wouldn't be able to stand it if it's like that every day. Yeah, there's no end to the number of people who can't handle it and quit, but every time that happens, their wages go up. So I won't say it's in vain. Even having to deal with all the noise and hostility, they still made a wage that Oishi found enviable. Damn it, these guys. Can they hear or can't they? A group of squatters were in the way of the car. Oishi, sufficiently annoyed, laid into the horn, but there was no indication they were moving anytime soon. In this din, could they not even hear a car horn, or did they hear it and were being malicious? If there were any riot police nearby, they would have to make people move, but it just so happened that there weren't any people around here. Ah, jeez, just wait a minute. Oishi opened up the car. The hot air and even more heated roar of the crowd spilled into the car. Oishi said something as he grinned widely, but I couldn't hear what it was. He was getting them to move, something like that. Oishi stepped out of the car and closed the door. The din faded slightly. I stared blankly as Oishi headed toward the group and started some sort of conversation. Maybe we'd find the minister's grandson at Takasudo. At the very least, I wanted to find him there. Find him and slip the cursed bonds of this incomprehensible village. I could only pray. At that moment, a shadow was suddenly cast over me. Somebody was standing right outside the passenger side window, blocking the sunlight. I spun around, looked up, and realized who the backlit figure was. Huh? It was a girl. It was Furude Rika. The girl stared down at me with a bored look in her eyes. I didn't have any justification for it, but I felt like I had been found by somebody I shouldn't have been found by. To fill the silence, I raised my hand as I mouthed a meek greeting. Of course, there was no way she heard my small voice in this clamor, but even then, she should have seen me wave my hand in greeting. In spite of that, she simply stared down at me with a cold look in her face. At that moment, the noise and heat spread throughout the car once again. Oishi had returned to the driver's seat. Taking a look, the group were blocking the road and started to move aside while glaring our way. Sorry to keep you waiting. Shall we go? Oishi registered the figure of the girl behind me. One of the villagers came over and picked her up, in the manner of, "It's dangerous, so get away." It was then she whispered one or two words, however, I couldn't hear any of it. Well then, let's go. I'm gonna get it, okay? But of course, still within the speed limit. As if to shake off the still audible angry voices, Oishi floored the gas, along with the road and the din and the shouting. The villagers and the girl quickly disappeared behind us. As soon as we're through here, we're in Takasudo. Are you okay if we end up getting into a firefight? Don't be fumbling with the safety at the last moment, you hear? She laughed mockingly again. I was more concerned with what the girl had said. However, I was vaguely bothered by it. What was she trying to say with that apathetic and candid expression? I suppose it's normal if you're nervous from here on out, but if you don't deal with it, there's a chance you might do something rash. But there was no longer a way to confirm what that girl had tried to tell me. It might have been that the girl who warned me to go back to Tokyo again or else was saying something to me who was here now ignoring that warning. Even though I warned you, what a fool. I had the feeling she had said something like that. If you were to call Hinamizawa a rather lonely village, then Takasudo was outright desolate. For your everyday city boy like me, I just couldn't understand why anybody would force themselves to live here. There were signs that people had, but they were all covered in dust or enveloped in ivy, indicating it was all abandoned. People really lived in a place like this, didn't they? Well, it was a long time ago. A remote place like this is pretty rough for old folk to live, and the younger people probably want to try living in a more suitable place. And there's nobody left to take the reins. All that gets left is this. Even if I had no personal attachment to the village, seeing the disused buildings made me feel a little sentimental. It seemed that Oishi also felt the same way. There's so many goddamn typos in this. It's even worse than all the other novels in here. Was the wall found over here? The person who had found it must have had a good reason to come out to this desolate place. Yeah, there's some villagers who had a field out in the mountains here. They pass by in the mornings and the evenings. The villagers who work in the fields walk by here every day? No way, they probably go as far as they can by car. So in the early mornings and evenings they pass by here and just happen to find a single wallet? They probably did. And where exactly did they say they found it? In the thicket just a foot further ahead. The person who found the wallet just happened to have some stomach cramps and was planning to use the thicket to do his business, it seems. It was here he happened to find it. Probably hoping there was some toilet paper in there. Everything about that story just seems a little too convenient. Right from the discovery of the wallet, I just can't shake the feeling something's off. I expressed the feeling that I had from the start of the day quite frankly. It seemed too good to be true, but it was unwavering proof. But it was too perfect, seekingly so. That was my feeling. You might actually get beyond to something by saying it all seems a little too perfect. Meaning? The truth is, I heard a little something from a friend of mine in the 4th Division, where Oda Sonozaki referenced the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. She referenced it. Yeah, it's been several days since the minister's grandson's been kidnapped, poor boy. It'd be nice if they let him go soon. It seems that old Oreo muttered something like that while on her veranda. That little music was conveyed to the various people working deep behind the scenes of the Sonozaki family. Right. I heard something from Sato, the informant, that the leader, Oreo, had a concern somebody in the family would be considerate. So, in essence, she gave the order to release the hostage? I see it that way, and the wall being conveniently discovered was just a ploy to hand the boy over to the police. Why would they release the hostage? Well, there's only one reason why somebody would release a hostage, isn't there? What is it? They reached a deal. That would mean the minister promised to halt the Hinamizawa Dam project. The dam project will definitely go away. At that moment, those words that the girl had said resurfaced in the back of my mind. In the end, it was turning exactly as she had proclaimed. The young girl knew the circumstances. She knew everything about this kidnapping incident from the beginning to the end. Akasaka, the girl unexpectedly called my name. What is it? Go back to Tokyo. Huh? Before long you will woefully regret coming to this village. That would be an incredibly pathetic thing to see. So I thought I'd warn you right now. Why would I come to regret it? Stop whining. When you tried crossing the road when the don't walk sign was up, did your parents finish explaining why it was dangerous before pulling you back to the sidewalk? They'd pull you back right away, wouldn't they? They'd pull you back before explaining why it was dangerous, wouldn't they? In other words, it's something like that. The girl who knew everything from the start to finish had warned me in the beginning, go back to Tokyo. Akasaka is such a coward. We'll probably find the boy, but what happens afterward will probably be a bit of a problem. How'll be a problem, though, is something a single officer like me can't figure out.
Do you know a girl named Furuderica? What I had said was such a non sequitur that Oishi sat stunned in silence for a while.
Of course I know her. She's the only daughter of the Furude family, one of the three families.
What kind of girl is she?
Well. This is an unexpected name to hear, but I'm a bit surprised. Does the public safety think that the Furude family smells fishy and wants to keep an eye on them? Share some of that information with me, please.
No, it's nothing like that. It's just something caught my attention.
Well, whatever. It wouldn't do to not answer a question from a friend I sat at the same table with.
I'm honored that you call me a friend.
So that little lady is, well, somewhat of a village mascot. She's beloved by everybody in the village. Some of the older folks worship her, especially.
Worship?
I don't know much about it, you see. Girls born in the Furude family have a somewhat sacred implication, it seems. It's one of the local beliefs in Hinamizawa, the living incarnation of Oyashiro or something like that, or so the story goes, apparently.
Oyashiro? Now that you mention it, I think I saw Oyashiro written on some of the Alliance banners. What is Oyashiro exactly?
It's the name of the guardian deity of Hinamizawa. They believe it'll exact punishment on those who would do ill toward the village. Well, if there was such a convenient god around, the guides of the dam would probably long have been done in by divine justice. Luckily, nothing like that has happened to anybody just yet.
The grandson of the minister who trifled with the village as a result of Oyashiro's anger was, what they call it again? Oh, right. Onikakashi. The minister's grandson was demoned away. That would probably be how the script is being written.
I see. It probably turned into something like that.
Divine punishment brought by Oyashiro. Then the culprit is the living incarnation of Oyashiro, that girl. I didn't even know exactly what I was saying. The fact that Oyashiro laughed it off was a bit of a relief. Oishishiro's laughter was so infectious, I began to laugh like an idiot as well.
Oh, this is unusual.
Oishi, after laying into the horn several times, rolled the window down and leaned out, waving his arm in an exaggerated manner. It was a car headed the opposite way. Until now, we hadn't run into any cars except our own. And of all the places, it was at a desolate location. It seemed Oishi knew the owner of the car. The other car also chirped its horn and came to a stop.
Dr. Irie, good afternoon.
The other door's window rolled down slowly, revealing a young man in a white overcoat. He was about my age, or perhaps a bit older, but you really can't judge somebody by their appearance. Why, if it isn't Oishi, good afternoon. Fancy meeting you here.
That's my line, Doctor. I never thought I'd see you here. What happened?
Oh, nothing. Just a little house call.
Oh, really? Was it an emergency?
No, nothing quite that serious, thankfully.
Oops.
I'll take my leave here. If I don't get back quickly, my staff will be angry with me.
Being the head of a clinic must be tough. Well then, take care.
The young doctor named Irie, after gesturing his farewell, drove forward and soon disappeared around a corner. Oishi also drove forwards, but soon came to a stop again. He pulled out a worn map book from the dash. His expression didn't have an ounce of irreverence. He was perfectly serious. What is it?
The clinic shouldn't be making any house calls today. Must have been quite an emergency, or otherwise a patient with some extenuating circumstances.
Oishi flipped through the pages, opening up to the map of Takasudo. After that, he took a look around and started to figure out where our current location was. Are you saying that the emergency is suspicious?
Didn't I say? There's hardly anybody that lives in the Takasudo area. The road we're on right now is here. Dr. Irie came from this direction.
Having no sense of our surroundings, I couldn't digest anything about the place he was indicating on the map.
We're heading toward the spot where the wallet was found. By the way, that's over here. But see, if you're heading to one of the few residences in Takasudo, it's the wrong road.
Meaning Dr. Irie came from a direction where there are no residents.
As long as somebody working in the fields between these mountains didn't collapse. But if somebody collapses, and you call a doctor normally, you bring them back with you for a more detailed examination.
But just now, Dr. Irie said it was nothing serious. It didn't seem like anybody else was in the car with him. Oishi didn't say any more than that. I also said nothing more. That doctor now just examined a patient close by. Only that. The noisy radio had suddenly gone quiet. The sky had suddenly turned into oppressive color. As Oishi mused it might start to rain, a torrential downpour started, as though trying not to disappoint him. Eventually, Oishi stopped the car. The only sounds to break the silence were the percussion of the rain of the roof and the soft squeak of the windshield wipers.
Let's do this in a bit of a hush-hush, shall we?
Saying that in a quiet voice, he exited the car without an umbrella, careful not to make any noise. Oishi leaned over, indicating the other side of the thicket. He was pointing to the prefabricated shed, a car that was parked beside it. The car looked obviously well cared for. It wasn't a vehicle that had been left here for several years. What's that shed?
It contains equipment used by the Forestry Service. I heard that they don't go near it except during the summertime.
Does the car belong to somebody from the Forestry Service then?
Dunno. It doesn't look like an official vehicle, though.
Oishi was playing it cool, but my nervousness was gradually increasing.
Just in case.
Saying that, Oishi returned to the car. I thought he was going to get an umbrella, but he grabbed on the onboard radio instead.
Hello, this is Oishi. Do you read? Greetings. Greetings.
Yes, this is the Okinomiya SP. Oishi, we read you loud and clear, over.
I'm currently in the front of the Forestry Service's equipment shed. Not the one in the direction of Yagochi, the one in Takasudo, if you head there from Hinamizawa.
Affirmative. Copy that.
There's some suspicious people in the shed. Proceeding to investigate. If you don't hear back from me in 5 minutes, get in touch with the local police substation. Have them send a cruiser as soon as possible. If you would, please.
Understood.
Well then, shall we go take a look?
Since he was the first confined here, he had heard the sound of the car multiple times, so he thought the far-off sound was nothing more than the same. However, the reactions from his captors was until now something he hadn't seen before. They jumped, reacting as if shocked by a jolt of electricity, and pressed against the window, cautiously peering outside. They stopped.
Someone from the Forestry Service? This is bad. Nah, looks like the cop to me.
One of the captors lifted the boy by his collar and pressed a blade against his cheek.
Hey kid, keep quiet for a bit. I think you know this, but if you try and shout, there'll be problems.
Toshiki Inugai was sure the doctor had reported things to the police. He felt relieved when he thought that he was safe, but not imagining his captors would exert any violence when they were cornered, his anxiety remained unabated.
What do? We gotta buy time. Take the kid and slip out of the back. We'll meet back here when the heat's off.
One of the perpetrators grabbed the boy by the collar and forced him to stand. Of course, Toshiki Inugai tried to resist by feigning that his illness had been aggravated by the rough treatment, but his captors paid no heed. The door was violently banged upon.
Excuse me, hello?
The door was being banged on again. Toshiki Inugai hesitated for a moment to respond to the voice by yelling. However, he was being indecisive. His mouth was covered, taking that option away from him. The leader of the captors waited for the other to go. The younger perpetrator nodded in response while keeping the boy's mouth covered, started heading toward the back door.
Hello, did you need something? How do you do? This is the police. Would you mind opening the door? This sun rain has got us in a bit of trouble. I'll just open.
The moment the lock was undone, Oishi forced the door open. With a gleam of menace in his eyes, he pushed the man aside as he stepped into the room. Then in the small empty room, he was able to quickly discern the boy he was looking for was nowhere to be seen.
I heard this was equipment shed for the Forestry Service, but there's nothing here at all.
There was nothing inside the room that would indicate this was an equipment shed. There was only a mound of blankets indicating that somebody was sleeping here alongside empty food packets strewn about.
It's been empty for some time now. Never seen no equipment store around here. But this is the Forestry Service building, isn't it? Are you from the Forestry Service?
How about yeah, police? The two of them glared at each other suspiciously. Both Oishi and the man steadfastly refused to reveal their identity before the other did. The man, judging from the sharp look in Oishi's eyes, realized it'd be hard to talk him his way out of this one. No matter what he said, the most he could buy would probably only be about a few dozen seconds. Only the sound of rain filled this tense moment. Just then, they heard the sound of a struggle from far off. Oishi had a hunch. There was no doubt that was Akasaka, who was circling around the back and had slipped into the perpetrators who were trying to slip away. As Oishi thought that the man in front of him reacted a moment faster, the man swung with an attack that was more intended to obscure Oishi's vision rather than actually hit him in the face. Seizing his opportunity, the man aimed to kick at Oishi's groin without any hesitation, but he missed his mark and was unable to land that critical blow. The man was trying to pin Oishi, grabbed him by the base of his neck, both with his hands, and fiercely tried to push him down, but as Oishi fell backwards, as if kicking the man upward, he dug his foot into the man's midsection. With the leg acting as a fulcrum, the man was flung by the falling Oishi as if by a circle throw. The two of them squared off in the pouring rain.
Isn't this interesting? You wanna go?
Oishi, as if trying to cheer himself on, grinned smugly. Then he stood up, brushing the mud off himself. Even though he countered the assault, Oishi was getting up rather awkwardly compared to the man who he threw, who swiftly straying to his feet. Oishi! Hurry! Akasaka's voice rang out from the distance. Judging from the distress in his voice, he was already engaged in a fight and wanted Oishi to reconvene with him, but Oishi's hands were full as well.
Akasaka! Sorry, but can you wait a bit?
The man raised both his fists into a stance that hinted at him being acquainted with karate or some other form of martial art. Of course, Oishi, as a officer of the law, was decently versed in judo, but he also had moxie to have been through his fair share of fights before. Because of that, he could tell the man in front of him was quite a bit of better fighter than he was.
Ah, damn it.
Thinking that this was going to be easy just because the order came from the Sonozaki family to release the hostage of being a mistake.
You're pretty good. It's been a while since I got this worked out.
Oishi played up the situation like it was no sweat. His opponent, seeing his attitude, took it to mean that Oishi wasn't going to go down easily. The man wildly charged forward, attempting to grab Oishi. If the man managed a successful clinch from his low stance, Oishi would be tackled to the ground and end up being mounted. It was something that you saw often when children fought, but it was really bad position since you couldn't do much once you were in it. Oishi, responding to that move, also lowered his stance to collide with the man head-on. The moment they clashed, Oishi grabbed the man's lapel. As he yanked the lapel upwards, he smashed into the man's solar plexus with the elbow of the same man. It was a move from Oishi's own personal brand of brawling judo. When he grabbed on with his free hand and attempted to throw his opponent with both hands, the man lowered his center of gravity, swung his arms in a large arc, entwining them with Oishi's. Not only that, but he had forced both of Oishi's elbows to the outside, and Oishi, now in an awkward position, was in danger of exposing his back with his hands still clutching the man's chest. This guy practiced Aikido or grappling, didn't he? Oishi, cursing the fact that his fingers were twisted into the man's shirt and couldn't get away, released his grip, but he was still in that awkward position of being bent over, and to top it off at zero range, the man was able to read Oishi's movements completely as he tried to squirm his way into a better position, and then took the palms of his hands and swiftly clapped them over to both of Oishi's ears. Ah! Clapping the ears in any other martial art except for self-defense was basically forbidden. Karate and judo didn't recognize it as a legal technique. It was that much of a simple and dangerous attack. Oishi raised both his hands as he tried to reflexively clutch his own ears, but before that could happen, the man wrapped his arms around Oishi's neck. His thick biceps clenched firmly around the base of Oishi's neck like a vice. Oishi instinctively thought he was going to be killed. After that, it wasn't hard to believe that a man like this, who was accustomed to fighting, could crush his opponent's neck from this position. But his opponent didn't do that. He had chosen to keep hold and force Oishi to lose consciousness. That's why Oishi at the moment, even though his face was twitching, was grinning widely. Even though his opponent had a chance to kill him, he didn't choose to. He was thinking,
this guy has no intention of killing me.
However, even though that might have been the case, the man's hold on his neck was by no means gentle. In no time at all, Oishi's consciousness began to fade. Having the experience of having taken down countless times in judo during his student days, Oishi was utterly resigned to the fact that it was over. Akasaka was finally recovering from the intense pain of being kicked in a rather sensitive area. He had bumped into the captor carrying the boy by the back entrance. He had seen Toshiki Inugai's pictures plenty of times, but wasn't able to immediately ascertain if the boy in front of him was the real deal, with what his mouth was covered in packing tape. Also, with his limited experience, it wasn't hard for him to panic over how to deal with the situation. Of course, the perpetrator didn't overlook this momentary lapse. His kick landed squarely in the critical spot, with Akasaka not even having time to call for help. As the man flung the boy over his shoulder, he headed toward the front of the shed, but upon hearing Oishi's bellowing voice, he gave up upon going in that direction. He dashed off toward the forest, as if the way the boy that slung over his shoulder wasn't even there. Akasaka was lost for a moment. Meeting up with Oishi, who was fighting with the enemy, was by far the safer option, but he couldn't just lose sight of the fleeing man. Akasaka stood up, chased after the captor's back. He ran through the short thicket, branches, falling leaves, and crunching underfoot. The tips of the branches raked and clawed at him, small scratches inscribed themselves on his body one after another. He kept on stepping to the piles of mud, and his shoes were soon filled with murky water. But Akasaka, traveling through this unexplored forest, even though this was an extreme situation, emerges extremely unpleasant. "Stop! This is the police!" As he said that, he regretted immediately, as this was a waste of breath. There wasn't a thief in the world that would politely stop when told to by the police. To a city boy like Akasaka, running through this forest was an arduous task. However, it must have been no easy task for either the man carrying the minister's grandson. He neither gained nor lost his ground in pursuit. Akasaka, upon realizing that, gained a bit of composure. Just keep on chasing him. We're running in the same conditions. In fact, the man running with an awkward stride was at far more of a disadvantage. They couldn't run forever. Eventually, he'd definitely trip and fall. As long as he was being hounded, he'd definitely stumble. And as soon his wish was fulfilled, the man who had stepped in something lost his balance and was no longer able to bear the weight of the boy dropping him. Akasaka, in all honesty, didn't care about the perpetrator at all, just as long as he could ensure the safety of Toshiki Inugai. So the perpetrator ran off by himself. It was perfectly acceptable, but it seems that Toshiki Inugai was important to the man as well, and didn't elect to just run away empty-handed. Akasaka didn't know what to do in this kind of situation. His first priority should be to ensure the safety of the boy, subduing his captor being less important. Grappling with the perpetrator wasn't something he planned on, but most likely, it was either do or die. Akasaka's moment of indecision proved to be fatal. The man, aiming right between, or rather both of Akasaka's eyes, struck out with a jab. Not wanting that, Akasaka raised both his hands to shield his face. At that moment, the man kicked at his unguarded midsection. The pain almost felt like his vital organs were being squeezed out of his body, but he lashed onto his opponent's leg. But his opponent didn't hesitate one bit. Leading with his seized foot, the man jumped at Akasaka, applying pressure and pushing him down. Akasaka was unable to withstand that and fell, but under no circumstances was he letting that leg go. The two men fell together in a tangled heap. The man was desperate to pull his leg free from Akasaka, but having fallen in an awkward position, was unable to. The two of them rolled around the ground, floundering, about to gain an advantage, but Akasaka, who was holding onto his opponent's knee with both hands, and that opponent, who had complete freedom to move his upper body, were in two different, completely situations. The man who had gained positional advantage on Akasaka, who was still lashed onto his leg and couldn't move away, pounded full force on his head with both fists. Not only that, he found a rock nearby and beat it against Akasaka's skull. Ugh. The difference between being hit with a fist and being hit with a rock was vast. Akasaka quickly thought of letting go of the man's leg to free his hands to protect his head, but if he let go here, the man would get away. If he didn't dig in here, everything would be for naught. The boy he was trying to save was right there. He was going to save him and go back to Tokyo. If he could do that, it was goodbye to this freakish village. Without looking, I could tell my forehead had split open and was gushing blood, but I didn't let go of the man's leg. How could I? I won't let go! When the man realized that no matter how much he beat my head, he wasn't getting away, he used both his hands to grab my throat as if to crush my windpipe. I pulled my head back as a sign of slight form of resistance, but it was no use. The man's head enveloped my neck and began to crush it like a vice. It was less about the pain of not being able to breathe, so much as it was choking so hard I felt like I was going to throw up. It felt like my stomach was going to turn itself inside out, but I could only endure it. Damn it, damn it, damn it! My throat hurts! I won't let go. I can't let go. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to resolve this and go back to Tokyo. Go back to Tokyo and talk to Yukie, all about our unborn child. We're going to talk about our bright future. I had no intention of loosening my grip. However, it loosened just a bit. The man's leg came free. The man kicked as hard as possible. I tumbled backwards. My head was spinning. I wasn't able to get up right away. No, I couldn't even put any strength into getting up in the first place. Even so, I couldn't back down. If I let him escape now, this chance would never come again. Even just catching their scent was nothing short of a miracle. If we weren't able to get the minister's grandson back here, there wouldn't be another chance. The man tried to drag the boy to his feet, but the kid was displaying some unexpected resistance, allowing me to get up unnoticed. I grasped the rock the man had just beaten me with the head with. Now it's my turn! The rock should have been able to supplement that meager strength I had left, adding more than enough power to my attack. My fist still wrapped around the rock, tugged into the man's torso. It seemed it hurt him quite a bit. Ugh. The man rolled around for a bit, clutching at his side. Free from the man's grip, the boy hid behind me. Toshiki Inugai, right? I've come to help you! To the boy's words, he was waiting for the most. But the crisis was still not over. That was because even though he was clutching at his side, the man had gotten up again and had taken a fighting stance. I could see in the man's eyes the resentment at the pain I'd caused him, the confidence he could still beat me. If we were to clash head-on again, he might not even stop if my head were split open. Stop resisting! Surrender quietly! You should just hand the boy over. Do you want me to snap your neck? Who would listen to you now? Reinforcements are already on their way. There's nowhere for you to run. The man reacted reversely to the word reinforcement. So that's because he knew arguing like this wasn't just a waste of time, but to closer and closer to danger, realizing that the man shifted mental gears almost too quickly. Well, let's finish this fast. How about this? What? The man pulled from his back pocket was all the things a gun. Of course, I'm a police officer. It's not like I don't know what a gun is, but having one pointed at me was something I never experienced before. Was it real? Of course it was! There's no way it'd be a replica in a situation like this. Put both your heads behind your head and lay down quietly. Don't get cocky, you villain. I won't do anything you say. You stupid idiot. Do you not know what this is without me shooting you with it? Then shoot! Reinforcements will hear the gunshot and head right over here. Are you stupid? We're in the middle of the forest, and on top of that, it's raining. They'll never hear a thing. As long as he still held that gun, no matter how much I yelled at him, I was at a distinct disadvantage, but still I had a fighting stance. If I were in his shoes instead of wasting time yelling at each other like this, I would just shoot him and take the boy. But that was the fastest and most suppress any sort of further resistance from him. But that man was demanding my surrender without having fired a shot, meaning he either didn't want to shoot or couldn't. In other words, the man in front of me was soft. If I could buy just a little more time, the factors that would lead to my victory were numerous. Oishi was probably on his way, and the reinforcements we were called for should be on their way too. Not only that, they should have contacted the local police box. Without a doubt, somebody stationed in the village would be here much quicker than that. Damn it, do I have to put a bullet in you to understand how dangerous this thing is? There's no escape! Don't add to your crimes! At that moment, I heard the rustling of foliage and heavy footsteps approaching. If Oishi was coming here, it was a whole new ballgame. The man couldn't have more than one gun. Oishi, over here! Over here! Huh? I thought that time was on my side, but I failed to even imagine the enemy could have reinforcements. You could tell the man who had just appeared was one of the perpetrators just by looking at him. What are you doing? If you don't hurry up, the police will get here. Stop lollygagging. Damn it. What happened to Oishi? Ain't that tub of fella? He's down for the count. He is! Damn it! The boy, sensitive to the impending danger, curled up behind my back. How could this be? Damn it! Your buddy isn't coming. Serves you right. Shoes on the left foot now. As I backed up against a large tree while protecting the boy, the second man also pulled out a gun. I won't be saying this twice. Put your hands on your head and lie down. I refuse! As I shouted in protest, blood erupted from my left shoulder. It took a few moments to register I had been shot. Compared to the one from the movie and TV dramas, the first actual gunshot I heard was simple and mundane. In fact, it sounded more akin to a small fireworks I used to buy from the corner store as a kid. But there was no comparing the pain. It was a fear you knew only after you'd been shot. Sir, are you okay? Are you okay? The boy in his confusion tugged on my clothes, agitating the wound even further. I wanted to put on a bold face and reassure him, but my voice was hoarse and had the opposite effect. I'm alright. I've already called for backup. There'll be full squad here soon. It'll be quicker to put it through your head before the cops get here, but the fella said no more needless killing, so I'm gonna take it easy on you. Don't mess with me or I ain't holding back. This was bad. It was very bad. This second man had a completely different beast than the first. He had no signs of indecisiveness or mercy. If this man said he'd shoot, he'd shoot. He wasn't somebody that a man like me could buy time from. I really hated to admit it, but at that moment, the image of Yuki's smiling face crossed the back of my mind. I knew what that meant. I was warning myself to not throw my life away over a matter of pride. Of course I didn't want to die here. I was just starting a new life with Yuki, and I wanted to see the face of our soon-to-be-born child. Why should I risk my life for some minister's grandson when I was at such a critical juncture in my own life? Ah, damn it, damn it! I need to stop rambling on myself, so what do I do now? Give the boy an extent of my own life? What a good idea! Everybody's life is precious. My own life was in danger. Nobody would blame me. God damn it, it hurts, it hurts. If I'd known it'd be this painful, I wouldn't have played the tough guy. My biggest miscalculation was the sound of the gunshot was far quieter than I imagined. If it was only that loud, I'd be drowned out by the rain of the forest. It wasn't something that somebody far away could hear. Damn it! Wait! Just wait! I don't want to die! And I don't want to kill you, as long as you understand. Don't shoot, okay? Don't shoot! I have a wife waiting for me at home. I don't want to die! I want to shoot as long as you don't yell or nothing. Just quietly put your hands on your head and lie down. Will you really? Will you really? You'll keep your promise, right? This is a promise between men. I will. It's a promise between men. Keep your promise. Keep it. I'm going to get down on the ground, okay? I'm getting down. I'll keep my promise, so stop pointing that gun at me. You're still thinking of shooting me, aren't you? You want to shoot me, don't you? When I get down on the ground, you're just going to shoot me in the back of the head, aren't you? I won't. Fine. I'll put it away. I'll put the gun away. It's a promise between men. There. No problem now, right? Yeah, absolutely no complaints. Yeah. Ah! It was over in a flash. The moment he lowered his gun, Oishi didn't let his chance slip by. Oishi had been assessing the situation for quite some time behind the two men, but since they had their guns trained on me, he didn't really have a chance to jump in. Seeing the look on Oishi's face indicating that he wanted me to create an opening, I took on that role completely. Oishi forcefully lifted the arm that was holding the gun. He took the gun from the man an instant. The other man, who was slow in grasping what was happening, pointed his gun at them, but with his ally grappling with Oishi, he couldn't pull the trigger. If that man was one of the wrestling with Oishi at the moment, he might have shot without hesitation, but this man wouldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. Oishi kicked the other guy away while aiming the stolen gun with his left hand, pulling out his own. With guns akimbo, he was aiming at both men at the same time.
I do believe that's checkmate.
It was perfectly played. But heedless of the guns pointed at them, the men shouted "Scram!" as they scattered away at full speed. It was over in an instant. Those two running away without putting up a fight was honestly unexpected. Oishi, quietly clicking his tongue in admonishment, slipped both guns into his pants pocket.
Those guys know their stuff.
What do you mean?
An officer won't fire at somebody who's fleeing. I want to keep my pension here.
Oishi and I grinned at each other.
Are you Toshiki Inugai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inugai?
Yes!
This is going to be a major incident. We probably only cut the tail off the lizard, though.
Oishi smiled amusingly. The fact that the Onikafushi Defense Alliance, or rather the Sonozaki family behind them, was pulling the strings was apparent, but proving it wouldn't be easy. And with apologies to Oishi, this incident was unlikely to go public. If this caused an uproar, it would obviously lead to the minister losing his office, with HQ having decided that doing so was in the natural interest. This would probably be cleaned up quickly. It might be a rough way of saying this, but this was born in the shadows and was going to die in the shadows. Oishi probably understood the implications behind this incident.
For the time being, let's cordon off the area, since it seems that one of them sells a gun. After that, let's get Inugai to safety and get you to the hospital.
As the tension in the situation faded, the pain from the gunshot wound in my shoulder blossomed once again. My forehead was also stinging painfully and had grown hot enough to start a fire. Thinking that the tension had caused me to sweat, I wiped my forehead, but what came off was a large amount of blood. I realized my shirt had been stained bright crimson from the blood flowing from my head. I turned around. The boy was safe and sound, without a doubt. It'd probably be investigation on the men who ran, but that was for another day. At this point in time, I could safely say we had cleared the major hurdle of securing the boy's safety. As soon as I recognized that, it felt like the lights on my head had been hit by a power failure. My knees buckled from underneath me. The ground there was feeling as soft as a cloud. It didn't feel unpleasant even as I was covered in the rain-soaked mud. Oishi came closer asking if I was okay, but somehow I couldn't tell. I turned off the switch to the last light of my head. The exhaustion enveloped me. Sleep. Something softer than any blanket wrapped around me. Also, I really love it when Ryukishi writes action scenes, so yeah. They get even better. So, new tip, a very kind person. Wonder what this is about. Patients admitted to the hospital can only accept calls at fixed times. That's why she couldn't be receiving a call from him today. Yesterday she had teased him that he got lonely easily, so he might have struggled with the idea of calling her sooner. That was much easier to imagine, rather than that he might be too busy to call, because he's just that type of person. Yuki whispered that, smiling to herself. The announcement that was visiting hours were over and played over the hospital intercom along with some of the music. She engaged pleasantries with the family of the patient that was staying in the same room as her, probably eager for his mother to be discharged. Their small child was wearing a beaming smile. That child's mother was pregnant in the bed next to mine, with that may or may be their new brother or sister. They probably were ready to burst with the expectations, dreams, and worries of having a new sibling. The joys of a growing family. Bathing in those warm feelings, I stroked my own belly, which had grown quite large. I talked with him about how many children we wanted to have. We talked about if we had 3, they'd certainly be lively. However, there was an inescapable worry of whether I'd be able to handle giving birth that many times. There isn't a mother out there who wouldn't hate to give birth because of that worry, though. Yuki, smiling, as she said that to herself, gently stroked her stomach. The Metropolitan Safety Division, Public Safety Division, the place where the man's sense of justice had led him. That person was actually a very gentle, very fragile person. He didn't talk much about the specifics, but I didn't think he was suited for the assignment he was on right now. But as long as he said he was going to try his best, I would watch over him warmly. Your father, you see, is a very hard worker, you know. Kichika? Yukie seemed to be enjoying herself as she talked to her own belly. At that moment, Yukie suddenly became concerned about something and looked out the window. It used to be this time long ago. She remembered when she was little, around this time the countryside where her grandmother lived, the Higurashi would fill the air with their chorus. This is the middle of Tokyo. Unlike in the countryside, you couldn't hear the song of the Higurashi. But for some reason at that moment, Yukie felt that she wanted to hear that song.
I know what this hint's about.
So, alright, let's end this and we will